So, Henry, I guess we'll start, dude. It was nice to finally meet you, and obviously we've got a lot of mutual friends, but we haven't actually met in person, and we still, even after today, we wouldn't have met in person. But this is as close as we're gonna get for now.
Yeah, definitely going to be the closest for a while, I think.
So, dude, let's kick things off by just telling everybody who you are and what you do.
So I am a digital modeler, same as you, I think, but I'm out in California. I think I worked out the other day. I've been in industry for just over 10 years now, and I started life off in Coventry. Graduated in 2010, and first started working at a company called CGI, Concept Group International. I'm not sure they actually exist anymore, but that was where I got my first job actually as a designer, which was, looking back on it, absolutely balmy because I'm not sure I'm that good at sketching, but that's where I started, and then swiftly moved on to doing digital modeling because the Jaguar studio at the time needed like an extra set of hands, and I happened to be able to use Alias to an extent, but I honestly knew absolutely nothing thinking about it then, and it was only thanks to a few helpful people like James Depps. I don't know if you've ever met him, but he basically showed me the ropes on week one, and then super useful, and then I haven't really done anything since that point in time.
Henry, I've got a question for you with regards to getting your foot in the door at CGI. How did that come about? Because I was talking to the late Joe Malloy quite extensively around that time, and for whatever reason, nothing ever materialized. Because I graduated the year before you, and again, looking back on it, my work was fucking terrible. But I wondered like how that came about, and if like you guys, things started picking up again. I would say maybe around the time that you guys were graduating.
Mm-hmm.
Was it difficult to get your foot in the door there?
Do you know what? It's a bit, I guess, maybe an untraditional route in terms of the fact that there wasn't actually a job posting at the time. So I obviously graduated, like I said, in 2010, and then didn't have a job to go to, so I moved back home, and probably maybe took a week deciding what the hell I was going to do, and just coming down from being at uni for 4 years, and that final year can be quite intense as well, can't it? So I just started writing emails to anyone and any design consultancy I could find, whether it was like product design, car design, in the UK, in Europe, all that sort of stuff. And I must have had, probably 100 emails that I sent out probably, and sent my portfolio attached, just introducing myself and saying, hey, I've just graduated, here's my portfolio. Is there any chance I could do some sort of internship just to get some experience in industry? And a couple of people replied, and I had interviews and phone calls and stuff. And Nick Jones, who was the recruitment guy there at the time, reached
Slippery
out.
Nick.
Yeah, he got in touch with me and said, would you like to come and have a look at CGI and have an interview and stuff? And so I went back to Coventry, which is something I didn't think it certainly wasn't on my agenda to head back to Coventry. But about 3-4 weeks after moving home, I went and had an interview with him and just got chatting, and it just happened that there was a junior design position opening up, because I think they were just starting to expand their in-house stuff a bit more. So a week after that, I started at CGI, working as a designer for for them. And the first project I did was facelift bus faces for Alexander Dennis. So that was quite an interesting first job, and I must have been doing that for maybe 4 weeks before I went down to the Jaguar studio, because they had a satellite studio at CGI. So that's basically I was a designer for 4 or 5 weeks, and then I've been a digital modeler since then.
What made you decide to go down the digital modeling route? Was it just that you wanted to be a Jag, or?
No, it's I didn't really decide per se. It just happened that they were looking for, like I said, an extra set of hands on the first thing I did was a seat swab for the Jaguar XF wagon, and it was just meant to be like a short couple of week project, and then that project just kept going, and I was with them for 3 months doing that XF project, and then just from there I just was a digital modeler. It wasn't a conscious decision per se, but then the more I was doing it, the more I kind of realized that it was probably better suited to me rather than the design work, because as I'm sure a lot of people know, the design work is quite tough, coming up with the fresh ideas and being innovative all the time. And I think I realized after the first 4 weeks of doing that Alexander Dennis bus project that I wasn't one of these shit hot designers like I had in my year, and digital modeling just seemed to fit. It's quite technical. It's problem solving. It's still designing, and I really enjoyed doing Alias at university. And then I just got the opportunity to do it, and that's really the only reason why I became a digital modeler.
Out of interest, what did you do at university to familiarize yourself with Alias? Because I couldn't fucking use it at all.
Yeah, I mean, so there's obviously that one module where you basically get taught how to build a square, and then you're let loose on the whole software, which is an absolute minefield of buttons and just super complicated when you open it up. But I got given a Alias book. I think it was Autodesk 13 or something, book on how to do digital modeling.
Was that the one with the teapot and the ship, exactly, and the table, and
exactly,
and there was like a really crude car on the front that looked like it had been built with I don't know, SolidWorks or
that's right,
Microsoft Paint. So
I basically just managed to get I think at the time Autodesk were doing student. Oh no, they weren't doing student versions. So I think the first version I had was probably from a friend. Yeah, exactly. A slightly naughty version, and I just used to sit at home and just play around with it. And at the time, I thought I was the absolute dog's bollocks at doing it, because a lot of other people were just shit hot at sketching and weren't too keen on the modelling. So I ended up being the one in group projects that would do the CAD models and the visualization sort of stuff. And I kind of was taught maybe in the second year by, hey buddy, I was taught.
Who's he?
This is Hendrix.
Hi, Hendrix.
This is Hendrix, named after the gym, because we're alcoholics over here. So.
Does he mind being on camera?
No, he loves it. He absolutely loves it. So we had visiting lecturers, and one of them was Mike Turner, who was at one point the lead, the chief of design at JCB. But that was afterwards. But at the time, he was like a visiting lecturer, and he is shit hot on Alias. But he told me that it's a really good tool to actually progress a design, so you don't have to necessarily work it all out in sketch form. You can sketch something, take it into Alias, do a few lines, use that as an underlay, and then evolve the design a bit more. And so that's kind of how I got into using Alias, was to try and augment my not so hot 3D perspective skills and all that sort of stuff with the pen. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I just ended up being the kind of CAD guy in the group project scenario, and I found it really useful for my final year project to use CAD rather than clay or purely sketching.
Wow. I've talked about this extensively before, but it was just a total minefield. And I think everything that I learned, which was next to nothing, was basically out of that book. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's really only working with primitives. I think. I mean, there's a little bit of if I remember correctly, there was like a mobile phone as well. Yeah. In that book where there was a shuttle. I couldn't do that at all. It was way beyond me.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever looked at any of your uni models, but I opened up some of mine maybe just before Christmas, and it was just hilarious. Like, compared to where I am now, completely different ball game. And I honestly don't think I learned anything serious or meaningful until that first week that I was in the Jaguar studio, and James Dex was like showing me how to use the fillet tool and stuff like that. I didn't, before that I didn't even know the fillet tool existed. I was using like round or something, and it was just no one teaches you about surface control per se, and there's all sorts of tricks that you learn. I think it's the same with probably a lot of industries, and maybe even the designers themselves. You learn a lot of stuff once you actually get into industry, or at least that was my experience. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all of these things on Instagram and social media, and there's all these kids that just absolutely shit hot at everything, and it makes me think, that my time is limited, because these guys are coming out of university and they can literally do pretty much a full rendered movie animated of their project, and it's super impressive. Like, the tools that are out there now beyond Alias are incredible. So
it's pretty fucking scary that when I see that, like, I just wonder, they must be going to an exceptional institution that is really like proactively showing them everything to a high degree. And I know that there are one or two places that do that.
Yeah.
But it's unbelievable. Like the complete toolbox of skills that some of these kids have got.
But there's a lot more stuff online now as well compared to when we were at university. YouTube was around, but it was a place where people used to store videos, because memory cards are so small. They used to use YouTube to store their videos, and so from then it's evolved into a completely different platform. And there's thousands of videos that you can use to learn how to do things on pretty much anything from Alias or Photoshop, or fixing a kitchen sink, if that's what you want to do. But it's a completely different world to when we were at university, where we were still transitioning, I feel, from knowledge from lecturers and books and a few things off the internet. The even Car Design World was a completely different website back then than it is now.
I mean, Car Design News.
Car Design News, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty much a forum, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So Henry, you've jumped around quite a bit. Like, you obviously started out at CGI, you were at JLR, you did a short stint at Nissan, and then obviously you were at McLaren for looks like 5 years. Mm-hmm. What was the choice to to go to America?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that kind of came about completely out of the blue. So I think I'd thought about leaving McLaren 2 years previously, and going contracting. And for various different reasons, I decided not to, leave in the end, and I stayed another 2 years.
Oh, sorry, but you were permanent there, right?
I was permanent at McLaren, yeah. So I guess at CGI, I was permanent employee of CGI, and then they're like an agency that pays people. So I kind of just went where they needed the extra heads. So that's why I did 3 months. 3 months at Jag, 3 months at Land Rover, working on the Defender concept back then, and then 3 months at Nissan, which was, in hindsight, a really useful transition from Land Rover to McLaren, just because of the kind of design language that was, it was Infiniti, so more sculpture, I suppose. But the California thing came about. I'd messaged my friend Graham, who'd moved out maybe 6-7 months before.
Hetherington.
Graham Hetherington, yeah.
Shout out to Graham.
Shout out to Graham. So I was just messaging him saying, "Hey, how you getting on?" And he said, "Yeah, really loving it. By the way, they're looking for digital modelers out here at Hyundai. You should put your CV in the hat." So he introduced me to the guys at Technicon, who are one of the recruiting companies out here, and a few months later, I was in California. So completely whirlwind experience, but I think it was a mixture of being slightly frustrated in my current role and just looking for that next opportunity. And concurrently, I was actually looking at contracting in Sweden and London as well. And this, I guess at 27, the thought of going to California was pretty cool. So we decided to give it a go and come out here and see what it was like. And that was 4.5 years ago. So
was that you and Hendrix?
No, Hendrix we got out here. So me and my wife came out here, and Hendrix is actually my first pet, if you can believe it. So it took 29 years for me to have a pet, and ended up with him.
Very nice. Dude, were there any issues with with your wife coming out with you as well, with regards to visas and stuff like that? Were you guys already married at that point?
No, so we weren't actually married at that point, because the way the visa works, it's a spousal visa. So I know some countries, I think Australia, you can go out and be just a partner, like girlfriend, boyfriend, and you can be attached to the visa there. But for the E2 visa out here, you have to be married. So there was no issues in terms of being attached to my visa once we were married, as it were. So
wow.
Making it sound like we got married just for the visa, but we've been together for quite some time. So I managed to convince her to come to California with me, and we got engaged out here when we came for a look-see, because soppily, I suppose, I realised that it was a really nice opportunity, and I wanted her to come along for the journey, as it were. So it all just clicked at the same time. It made sense, and if it wasn't for that cheeky message to Graham saying hey, how you doing, which had no kind of what's the word I'm looking for? There was no subplot to the message. It just a serendipitous moment that's worked out really well. So what is that? Is it a voice machine? No, it's the Roomba.
Oh, the Roomba.
The Roomba's decided that it wants to get in on the action.
Henry, I wanted to know, like, you obviously in the UK you worked in a couple of different places. Was the style of working a lot different in America?
Yeah, I think it has been quite different insofar as my time at McLaren. It's a very small team. It's a very small company. Everyone's in that same building. So I think when you were talking to Paul Howes, he kind of was saying how you could just go and talk to the engineers and work things out like that. Whereas where I am now, we're like a satellite studio, so the work is slightly different insofar as we don't necessarily take a project as far down the line as we did at McLaren, which was sketch all the way to the production data. Whereas here, it's more getting the theme selected and then it's handed off to the team in Korea. But I'd say that's the main difference. The rest of it's still quite similar insofar as you're working very closely with the designers and trying to get their ideas into 3D. But the biggest difference is definitely that there's a point usually. I mean, we have done some production cars, but there's a point usually where you just stop and it's handed over, which is quite different.
Tell me something of those two things of ways of working. Which do you prefer, or do you prefer one over the other?
I think there's something to be said for being able to see the project right through from concept through to production, and that's something that was really cool about like same as like Land Rover and McLaren, is that you literally see the first sketch and then you see the car rolling off the production line, which is a really cool experience. Even though that production car might come off the line 6, 7, 8 months after you finish on that project, the fact that you can then just walk down the corridor and you see all the prototypes and everything, that's really a really cool experience. But I guess the thing that's cool about where I am now is that it's a really varied portfolio of work. You can be doing a city car one week and then a semi truck the next week, or a sedan, all that sort of stuff. There's interiors, exteriors. Obviously, we did that at McLaren, but there's just so much going on, so many projects, because they don't. McLaren just do supercars, so you're just doing supercars, which is awesome. But I guess the positives of where I am now is that you're doing something different every week.
Dude, I've been in. Well, I spent 3 years at JLR, and I was at Volvo for a year as well, doing a bit of production stuff. And I think there's a lot to be said for what you've just mentioned with regards to seeing something, start out as a sketch and eventually seeing the product, and that's a very rewarding thing. But at the same time, it can also be a very fucking long and monotonous process at times. And the idea, the prospect for me of working in a purely concept environment was always really appealing, and it is great. But you can also get easily annoyed and frustrated and disheartened with the amount of shit that just ends up in the bin perpetually,
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest negative to a concept satellite studio. Like you say, it can be super rewarding. It's fun. It's fast paced. as I mentioned, you're always working on different things. I think one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years, or I've been more conscious of, is because we're competing with, I think we've got five studios. You can get to the same point in a project every time, and you see everyone is trying really hard to make sure that project gets through all the different gateways, because obviously the further down the gateway line you get, the more work your studio has, and then budgets can increase and all that sort of stuff. So it's obviously like you said, when you keep feeling like you're losing projects, it can actually be really mentally tough, and you start to notice other people kind of, their heads just dip, and they're like, what's the point? They're gonna win anyway, which can be really difficult to deal with on a week in, week out basis. But the flip side, recently we've just won a load of projects in our studio, and due to the global situation, we've had to do the projects in a slightly different way. So a lot of the bucks, the cars and the interior bucks will be done here or in Germany digitally, and then they're sent to Korea, and they're made at a vendor in Korea. Now, historically, the designers have gone to Korea and helped finish, the build off and tweak anything that doesn't quite work when they put it together. We've just done one completely remotely. No one's been to Korea, and we've ended up winning that project. So everyone's super excited. It's the first interior we've won for quite a long time, and that is the flip side of it. Is there's the complete elation of beating the other studios and knowing that our design is going to be in a production car.